Okay, next piece of the puzzle then is to fit the stator cover. So this is all torqued up. I'm not going to need to access that rotor bolt anymore, so I can get the cover on now. It's a bit of a shame you haven't got an inspection plug. That's the way they did it in the 80s with Honda. I can't even kind of make one really. It's not enough room anywhere to fit anything in. Timing marks are so far over, and they've got to line up with that cut line there, so you can't even install a window anywhere because it would go right up to the edge. Anyway, try not to damage that before we put it back on. So on that note, let's fit this to the bike and to the engine and tick that little job off. There's absolutely no dowels for this, so what I'm going to do is, as I always do, just get this out of here. Oh, found out what the third gasket's for. A very sharp-eyed, well, more informed I should say, viewer explained that on the custom models the rear cylinder has 2 gaskets because it's split. Didn't know that. Anyway, that's why it's included in the pack. So anyway, what am I going to do? I am going to flip that over, stick that on there like that, tell it to stay, and then we won't have any problems installing it. That's not going to work. Let me get my Hylamar blue and we can stick it on. Okay, hopefully I won't make too much of a hash of this. So what I'm going to do is just dab some around. Oh, he says putting a huge blob on that bit. Really follow the advice and tips I've had on others' videos where they use a little paintbrush. And once I've done this again, I'll just use a little bit of acetone just to get the sticky gloop off anywhere it's spilled over onto the side. That should do it. And then we can just stick that on there like that. That's all good. Okay, right, and do you know what? I've completely forgotten to get the bolts out, so let me just dig them out. I'm just going to need to clean them up as well. So let me just pause you while I dig the bolts out and give them a little clean up. Well, here are the bolts now in a reasonable state of clean and free from paint. They were covered in black paint. If you don't believe me, go and check out the playlist from when I stripped this engine down. It was awful. So I've done the threads a little bit as well, not with a dye, just on the little wire wheel. So they should be okay. I'm going to put a little bit more Hylamar blue on this side. I should just take up any unevenness on the surface. I was going to apply this to the actual crankcases instead, but then I thought, well, it's easy to smear it all over the place and get it in places where you don't want it, so it's easier to clean off here. So we'll stick with that plan anyway. Right, dead easy to see which way this lines up because you've got the tab there that goes there where the stator cable goes in, and also you need to get the writing up the right way. Okay, so let's pop that on. And 2 bolts through. Should have gone and got a suitably sized socket to assist with starting these off, shouldn't I? Which I think we've done. Okay, right, that's not going anywhere for the minute. Right, I'm guessing 8mm. Yeah. Let's just put those, I'll send those home, seat them down, get the rest in. You don't necessarily need to do this uniformly while you're just popping them in. Just don't talk down on them. I'll look up the spec. I suspect it's probably 10 to 14 for this sort of size bolt. It's only what, a 6mm shaft, isn't it? The bolt looks like it's not going to need much in the way of torque, just really, evenly spanner tight them in a crisscross fashion, and you won't go too far wrong. I'm not even going to bother breaking out a little torque wrench for it. So, notice that one up there, down there's already done. It's a little stiff in the thread, that one is. But I think I mentioned in the last video, I don't generally clean out the threads unless I absolutely have to in the cases, especially when it comes to things like aluminium oxide, etc. I don't want to go using taps because you really can damage the threads or ruin the threads, and you end up having to tap them out to a much larger size. And right, anyway, so they're seated. I'm just going to go nip that up, just them two, nip that up, nip that up, nip that one up, nip that one up, and that will do. That's that all done. I'll just clean up the little excess bit of squish that's come out, and I'll use a bit of acetone for that. I can't think of any reason why this cover would need to come back off, but if it does, no drama really. I suspect the gasket will remain intact, but I just wanted to use the Hylamar just to take up any other low spots or anything like that, because they are old cases, and it's best as you can clean them up. You're never going to get exactly perfect. I've used carbide scrapers and stones on these cases, but every little bit of help it can get. So that's that bit done. Let's move on to the other side and look at the clutch cover. Sprocket cover I'll put on obviously much later because the chain will need to go on. I think I forgot to mention that I cleaned up the mating surface on the other side just using some brake cleaner before I did all of that. Using a bit of blue roll, but just be mindful of the fact that sometimes little bits of it just flake off and might disappear into your engine. Not going to be catastrophic, the chances of it finding its way into a gallery. Anyway, that is just a bit of brake cleaner just to sort of remove any oil. So there are dowels, one there and one there. So I'll probably will just again use a little bit of Hylamar blue just for the extra bit of assistance that it will give. There's a little bit of rubbish on there. And when you do this, make sure these grommets are sort of pushed fully home. And that will prevent any leaks. But yeah, this is kind of they're not under pressure. Well, I mean, it is crankcase pressure, but it's vented through the breathers, etc. You won't really get any localized pressure there, and it is on top, so it shouldn't leak. So I think this has come out rather nice. It's not a fantastic finish, it's not highly polished, so the clear coat, I think, does it a service. It is very high temperature clear coat that I'm putting on it, so not that the side covers get that hot, but it will just fare better than any regular clear coat, so because they're still going to get quite warm. Anyway, let's flip this over and get the gasket on. Really is as clean as I'm going to be able to get it. As I said, I've used scrapers and even stones on the heads. Not on the heads, yeah, on the heads actually, just very gently, very carefully. So just making sure I'm getting any other little bits of debris. It's amazing, the tiniest little bit can actually cause a leak. But this is pretty good. Right, okay. Right, I've prepped the case to go on, clutch cover obviously, and I've also cleaned up all the bolts. As you can see, I've labelled this stator in error, and that's because I'm a bit dumb. And anyway, they're nice and clean. I've put them on the old little wire wheel, so they've come up lovely. They were covered in huge amounts of paint, some of which you can see I peeled off. That is just paint. It was clinging to these brackets. Anywho, before I go and fit that clutch cover, I'm just going to come around down here. Ooh, bit dark, I'll turn that around. And I'm going to fit the starter, which I've just got sat right here. And that's a brand spanking new starter, because the one that was on the engine when I got the bike was dead as a doornail. Took it apart, it was completely shot away. Anyway, let me pop that in. And the reason I'm doing that now is because it's a lot easier, oh, sorry, very dark, it's a lot easier to engage with the actual idler there. Alright, so anyway, otherwise it might be a bit tricky to get in, so it's easy to put on first. So you can see how easy it fits. They're the two mounting bolt holes. Just put the neck of it through there, engage it with the idler, first idler, and that's it really. Bolt it up. Obviously I'll wire it up later. So yeah, not difficult to get an idea of how it fits, because the mounting holes just have to line up. Just pop the bolts in there, torque them up to like, I don't know, 15, 20, which just means seat them down and perhaps give them a quarter turn, something like that. And you can see the spline has engaged with the first idler gear there, which yeah, should be, it's doable with the cover on, and I wouldn't recommend you wasting a gasket and taking the cover off if it's already on there, if you're servicing the starter, but you can get to the idler gear to help it in, and the idler gear has got some flex in it with the cover off anyway, so just need to button this up now. Right. It's just 2 bolts. Just need to finagle that in a little bit. Again, this is another benefit of having the cover off, because you can, if you need to move this out, you can sort of tap it from the other side. I think that's in. Yeah, it's in. Wouldn't ever bother using Loctite on things like this, to be honest. If you've ever tried to remove a starter motor that's been in for any period of time, you'll be aware you probably don't need to use bolts. Anyway. Right, so okay, just for good measure, I'm going to just turn that in. Yeah, that's as far as it'll go anyway, I think, to make sure it doesn't wiggle its way off when I'm putting the engine back in. Right. Okay, should be able to just slot this on. I have prepped this with brake cleaner. Okay, anyway. Okay. Looks okay. Just need to slot the bolts in. Let me pop those in. Definitely worth making yourself a template, and you can either draw it out to the actual shape for far easier identification of the which one goes where. I think these are all the same length anyway. I don't think there's any, there might be one or two that are slightly longer anyway, but when you've got things like little clips and things like that, it's always useful to remember, but just take plenty of photos anyhow. So by pulsar, I meant where the cable goes through to the pulsars. So literally, there you go. So I'm going to have to probably tap these in. Pretty sure the clips go that way as well. I will probably have to just tap these in with a little tap hammer to punch their way through the gasket that I suspect is probably very slightly overhanging the hole, each hole. Okay. So what I'm going to do, make it really easy. Yeah, torque settings for bolts of this size is so low, I just wouldn't even bother using a torque wrench, just go around it evenly. You want something like a 10 Newton meters, something like that. Make sure you tell me if I miss one, won't you? Sometimes they just come loose, even though they were seated. These might not have been seated properly. So. Didn't like the click on that. Okay. Okay, that's that all done up. Do you know, when you're doing this by hand, as in just tightening up all your fixings, one of the best ways to make sure that you don't over tighten anything if you're just guessing it, because my smallest torque wrench probably goes down to let me see, yeah, that goes down to 5 Newton meters. So, but you know, let's just literally nip it up. So best way to not over torque is just to use a small spanner, obviously the right size, but just a small spanner as opposed to you know, ratchets and extensions and things, and you won't go too far wrong because you don't have a lot of leverage. So that works well. And yeah, keep an eye on it. If you see any little oil leaks, nip them up. Final jobs then before the engine gets refitted to the frame, although I've got some work on the bike to do before I put the engine back in. But final bits on the engine, new spark plugs, although I will leave those until the engine's back in and I've compression tested. These plugs don't look too bad. They weren't properly gapped. They're all a little bit tight, and one of them absolutely no gap on it whatsoever. Anyway, so I'm going to replace them. Plugs are cheap. So exhaust, rear exhaust downpipes just need a clean up and fitting back on. Heat shield is in a bit of a sorry state, so that's going to get a good clean up. And I need to source some new bolts. I know I've got 4 washers and 3 bolts there, and that one, as you can see, I had to weld a bit to get it out. So, but they all came out okay. So I'm going to get some new fixings, and the oil filter needs to be fitted brand new, and that is it. Because this engine is completely and utterly rebuilt. Which in reality means it's been stripped, cleaned and probably not fixed, because I've still got a bit of a tick on the number 3 cylinder when you rotate the crank 720 degrees. It's definitely a cam issue. I think it might be springs interference or something like that, possibly. Don't know, so I'm hoping it'll disappear. I did have a little bit of a noise on the rear block over on that side when I first pulled the engine out. I really couldn't identify any issues, so I couldn't really fix any issues. So I'm hoping it's just one of those little ticks that might settle down, go away, not cause any problems. It's an old engine, it's 40 years old. So for now, it's done. Just got a few more bits to fit, which I'll do in the next video, and then we can move on to the rest of the bike. Stuck over here with bits piling up on it. And I've got to rebuild the brake calipers. It's going to need new chain sprockets, and the forks need a rebuild. All of the fairings which are piled up there, I've got cracks and bits and bobs in. All the paint needs sorting out. It's had a hand painted coating of splatter. That's the only best way I can describe the paint job on this bike. Wrong. I've cleaned all of that out. Previous videos, I've acid cleaned it and it's looking okay inside. I've sorted out the petcock, the tap, all good. Carbs are in that box there. Might need to get a mechanic to have a look at those. I've cleaned them, put them together. There's a few little bits and bobs that need doing to them, but I'd rather have someone who knows what they're doing sort them out. So that's probably a job for once the engine's back in the bike anyway. Oh, and the clocks are going to need replacing because they're in KMH, because this bike was imported from Japan in 2009, and those clocks have, I think, a rev limiter in them, because when this bike was made in the 80s, Japanese law just dictated speeds of vehicles on the road, bikes, cars, artificially limited, I think, to about 112 miles an hour, something like that. Much faster you go. So yeah, I think it's it just means that it's going to hit a rev limiter, and as you're going up through the gears, it's going to be quite sluggish, and you know, never going to want to reach the top speed. But you want it to get to its top speed quickly, don't you? So I can either pull them apart and sort out that rev limiter, or I could just replace them for a set from the US or somewhere else in Europe, which is probably what I'll do. And it'll just need a jolly good clean once I've pulled it out from under all this cardboard. Anyway, I've quite urgently got to do a little job on my phaser, because that's my daily rider, and it needs new chain sprockets, front and rear pads, because it's got its MOT in less than a couple of weeks, which I haven't booked yet, so I'm going to need to get on and do that. Probably not going to do videos on that because I've already got those on my channel anyway. If you like this kind of content, please do consider subscribing and hit the bell so that you can get notifications for future uploads. And if you would leave a like, it certainly would help with the algorithms. Anyway, I hope you're enjoying the nice summer weather on your bike. So until I see you in the next video, ride safe.